Okay, so this is the second part of continuing on with the eyes for the features. I'll just unplug that so you can see it over here. So they'll need to have the picture to work from. We've started to build up the tones. This is more probably paint than I would use if I wasn't doing it for demo purposes. They can start to build up the paints here, making sure they leave the whites of the eyes fairly clear. Started to build in the eyebrows, and it doesn't matter if they start to smudge, because you can see here that they start to blend in with the bridge of the nose. So the next part really is looking at where the shadows are and layering those. This is where they'll need to have patience to allow it to dry, and you can see where I haven't had patience and allowed it to dry and it started to blend in. So you want to try and avoid that if at all possible. So I'm going to use some of the blue now, and I'm going to use it neat out of the palette, and I'm just going to dot that onto here to start building up the shadows. And this is using your blooms, but you're just really controlling it so it doesn't go anywhere where you don't want it to go. And if it starts to flow out of hand or go somewhere where you don't want it to go, you can use a tissue or cloth to lift it out. And similarly, if you want to blend it in a little more, then you can. And I've started to add some of the detail to the eye using the Prussian blue and the brown, which I've got mixed here. And if you look really close up at the image on Marion Bolognese's work, you can see she's actually got some shading within the eye. So you're going to use some of that mixture, but you're going to want it really watered down. Don't leave the eye just white, because it will look really flat and dull and lifeless. I could do with a little bit more brown in there. And a bit more. Okay. You might want your students to have a bit of scrap paper in front of them so they can test their colours, or they can do it on the edge of the paper just to make sure it's right. So don't want the brush too watery, but you want your colour to be quite light, so they'll need to control the tone. So you're going to bring in some of the shadows that you can see in the top of the eye. So you're using the very tip of the brush, a little bit more of that I think, the very tip of the brush to control it so it doesn't get blended in with anything else that's going on in the eye, and that will start to give it a bit more depth, make it look a bit more real. When it comes to adding other details, so the eyelashes for example, you can see that there's one or two eyelashes that are very visible, and you can also see that underneath of the eye and the inside of the eyelid. So for that they're going to want to use maybe a pink or purple or a dark blue, and they'll bring that in under here just to give the eye a little bit more depth, and into the corner of the eye as well. So making sure they're layering it up, looking at their picture, seeing what it's going to do. With the eyelashes, they're going to want to use a dry brush again. You need to have made sure that all of this is dried before you attempt this part. So I'm just going to try and blow it dry a little bit first, and then I'm going to add that in. So I want next to no water on my brush when I do this, just really to maximise the depth of colour and also to stop the risk of it spreading. So I've got my dark colour there, and then I'm going to start building up the eyes. So if they outline the whole thing too thickly, it will make the eye look flat and unreal. So they need to use just the tip of the brush and build it up bit by bit as they go. And then with the eyelashes actually thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. And with eyelashes, less is more. So don't encourage them to do the spider eyes. And by spider eyes I mean doing something like this, where you end up with lots and lots of eyelashes that look like that. They need to start the other way around. They'll need a little bit of water in their paint to make it flow, but you should be starting from the bottom and moving to the top so you get a nice tapered end to your eyelash. If you start the other way around, they're going to look too blocky. So I'm going to rest my hand down here so that I can do it, and I'll put in the bottom lashes. Now you can see already where it's wet and it's starting to spread, so I need to leave that to dry a little bit longer. But I can start to put in my other lashes just using the tip of the brush. I find it easy to rest my little finger on the paper when I'm doing this sort of thing. It's still a bit wet, you can see it's starting to blur, but you can see the effect of the lashes coming through. I need to look at the direction the lashes are going in, so try and get them to really study that close up rather than just sort of doing lashes that do this all the way along, because she'll look really surprised. Okay, so I'm just going to work onto this eye so that you can see how to build up those colours. So I'm using this one as a reference this time. I'm just going to very quickly put some dashes of colour in so you can see how to build up the blooms. I'm going to use the pink for this one. It's important to let the layers dry, so if they're working on an eye, maybe get them to work in between onto a mouth or a nose so it's got the opportunity to dry out first, so that they don't end up with just the brown colour. You can see that's what's happened a little bit here because I've not had enough patience. I'm going to use a little bit of the royal blue out of the tin just to change it up a little bit. And I'm going to put some of that on the edge. And then I just want to use some of the water on its own to get those really lovely splodges. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of shade into the eye using my Prussian blue and my brown mixture. I want to water it down, so I'm going to use it on here as a little test strip, and then bring some of this shading into the eye there. Oh, wakey wakey. Some in here. Oh, it's a little dark. Never mind, I'll go with it. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to doing the pupil of the eye. Now this time I'm going to leave my highlight blank. I didn't do that the last time, so this is probably the easiest way to do it in terms of controlling the paint, is to leave that highlight so that they create the idea of it being more real. But if they do miss it out, you can go back into it using some white acrylic or some white watercolour, as long as you mix it up quite thick, but don't do it until everything else has been finished, otherwise you just end up with grey. So you can see here I've got some tones in the eye, so I'm going to start building those up. Use a little bit of that mixture to start giving it a little bit more realism, so it doesn't look so flat. Okay. I'm going to carry on doing the eyelashes just for demonstration purposes, but obviously they need to layer up more colours than I've got in here to start off with, but just so that we don't spend ages and ages literally waiting for paint to dry. So you can see the crease in the eye there, just here. So I'm going to use the very tip of my brush, and again I'm resting my little finger. Now depending on how confident they are, they might want to do this again using a colour pencil or a fine liner if they feel that the hand is a bit wobbly, and that's fine. I'm going to use the tip of my brush. Okay, and then I'm going to go on to do the edges of the eye. And you can see where it's spreading already, where it's a little bit wet still. And go over the top of the eye and then flick out at the edges. We can widen this line a little bit, make it a little bit thicker. So this line for me, this top line here across the lid, is a little bit too prominent, so I want to blend it in a little bit. So I'm going to use a little bit of water on the inside line just to blend it in so it's not quite so cartoony, makes it look a little bit flat. They could do it like this, or they can apply a wash over the top when it's had time to dry a little bit more. So you can see here she's got a blue wash over the top of it, so they could use some of the blue thinned out to put on the top. Okay, and then in here, in the corners of the eyes, you can see she's got a little bit of pink. So I'm just going to apply a very small amount of pink to the inside of the eye. I've gone a bit heavy handed there with the black, so I'll blend that in to make it look darker. And I'm going to use the pink on this side as well. That's probably a bit too much, so I'm going to take my tissue, just dab it off, and then I can do it again. Not quite so heavy handed this time. There we go. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to show you is just putting in the eyelashes. Hopefully this has had a bit of time to dry. So let's go back to our picture. Okay, so starting from the top to the bottom, really getting them to pay attention to the shape of the lashes. And as I said previously, less is more, so it's better to have a small number of lashes done well and really well observed than a large number of lashes that make the person, the subject, look a bit spider eyes. And again, if they struggle using the paintbrush to do this, then they can always use a pencil or a biro fine liner afterwards. I'm just going to add some shading to the outside of this iris. Oops, a bit too much water. Okay. So hopefully that should give you everything that you need to know to use your watercolours with your class. If you feel that you're struggling a little bit, then please come and see us and we'll help you go through it. Just going to finish around with these eyelashes and enjoy it. Make sure you have a little practice, and yeah, thanks very much for watching. Bye.